Welcome to This Explainer. Go ahead and grab a seat, take a deep breath, and maybe tightly clutch a comfort blanket, because today we're diving into a highly sarcastic, hilariously pessimistic breakdown of life itself. We're going to explore exactly why your existence is, essentially, a terrible contract you never even bothered to read before signing. If you've ever stubbed your toe and immediately questioned the entire meaning of the universe, you are in exactly the right place.
Section 1. The Contract of Life. Terms and conditions apply.
So think about it like this. When you download a new app on your phone, you just blindly scroll past those 50 pages of terms of service and hit agree, right? Well, you did the exact same thing with your existence. You were floating around peacefully in the void, and before you even left the womb, you were handed this classic riddle on a slip of paper: to be or not to be. That is the question. And like an absolute fool, totally mesmerized by the poetry of it all, you just stamped your tiny little thumbprint on the bottom line and agreed. Nobody warned you about the arithmetic exams, the terrible traffic, or the heartbreak. You just signed up for the full package, completely blind, no questions asked.
Section 2. The absurd wounds, daily reminders of a bad deal. Because you signed that terrible contract, you're now legally bound to this earth and subject to what we can call absurd wounds. We always like to think of human suffering as this grand, poetic, theatrical tragedy, a noble battle of good versus evil. But the reality? Sometimes it's literally just getting electrocuted by a kid's toy car track in the middle of your living room, or getting casually smacked in the arm by the side mirror of a passing bus while you're just standing there minding your own business. Or, my personal favorite, having a heavy D-cell battery randomly drop on your head from a balcony above. Every single one of us has our own customized, utterly ridiculous flavor of pain that we have to navigate on a daily basis.
Section 3. False existential solutions, desperate attempts to justify our existence.
So how do we actually cope with all these ridiculous injuries and the creeping suspicion that we got a really bad deal? We invent massive illusions. We can't just accept that we're here getting smacked by bus mirrors, so we create these elaborate systems to convince ourselves there's a profound purpose to it all. Take wealth, for example. Some think life is simply a game of amassing the most toys. But the reality is that everything you hoard, the mansions, the fancy sports cars, the exclusive private islands, it all just vanishes into thin air the exact moment you die. You spend your entire life frantically stacking up all these solid material goods, only to realize at the very end that they just dissipate into the clouds.
Others try a completely different route to justify it all by leaving a noble legacy. But let's break down the literal, absurd reality here. You proudly announce, "I'm going to write a book." The sarcastic translation, "I am going to chop down an entire forest of beautiful trees just to print my unoriginal thoughts on paper." Whatever having a child. Well, you're really just forcing another poor creature to sign that same terrible contract of existence without their consent. And then there's donating an organ. People act like absolute heroes for this, but really, you're literally just giving away your used trash that you don't even need anymore. You're completely done with it.
Section 4. The trap of love, the ultimate modern illusion.
And that brings us to the most popular and terrible way we try to suture our absurd wounds. Love. Yes, the very thing pop songs and greeting cards promise will fix absolutely everything. The math on this is brutal, folks. A microscopic 0.1% of people are actually perfectly happy with their supposed soulmate. Meanwhile, the other 99.9% of humanity is currently miserable, banging their heads against the wall, and agonizing over having to settle for a bitter half-grapefruit instead of their perfect match. We are all just politely pretending to be thrilled so our neighbors don't judge us.
Love isn't a cure at all. It's just a torturous modern illusion. Think about the sheer mental gymnastics involved here. It makes us suffer when we actually have it, because it's rarely as perfect as we imagined. It makes us suffer when we don't have it, because we feel terribly lonely. And it certainly makes us suffer when it eventually ends. It's a remarkably efficient machine designed entirely to generate human misery, all while we slap a giant smile on our faces and pretend we're having the time of our lives.
You start out completely fine. Your life is quiet, your schedule is your own, you can leave your socks wherever you want, and nobody complains. But then, you fall in love. Suddenly, that peace is entirely gone. You find yourself enraged by the way they smile at breakfast, or their terrible habit of leaving lights on in empty rooms. We use love to try and fix the absurd wound of life, but we're really just trying to heal a wound by applying an even bigger, more ridiculous wound right on top of it.
Section 5. The final bet. Why we keep losing. So if love is mathematically terrible, if it destroys our peace, and if it almost always ends in total disaster, why in the world do we keep doing it? Because falling in love is exactly like a degenerate gambling addiction at the horse track.
Imagine a horse you know always slows down right at the finish line. You lose your money, you're heartbroken, you shake your fist at the sky and swear, I will never ever bet on that horse again. I am done. But then, the very next weekend rolls around. The horse lines up at the starting gate, and what do? You bet it all again. We know it's a trap, but the illusion is just too tempting to resist.
And so we arrive at the ultimate existential question. Are we really just here to suffer the absurd wounds of rogue batteries and bus mirrors, just to fall in love and place another foolish bet on a horse we know is going to lose? Absolutely. So the next time you get electrocuted by a toy car, just remember it's all in the contract you signed. Thanks for watching this explainer, and remember to always read the terms and conditions.